Hi everyone. I hope you can hear me and see me okay and I'm coming through. I'm aware it is 4:15, so I am going to kick off. I do have half an eye on the chat, so if you are having any issues with audio or video, please let me know, but hopefully I'm coming through fine. Um, I appreciate on this welcome slide, it says the chat will be disabled. We do actually have the chat functioning, so you can use that if you need to. But if you do want to ask any questions at any point today, the Q&A function is there as well. And we just ask if you can use that if you have any kind of direct questions as we go. So to introduce myself, my name's Catherine. I am the content lead for the Key Safeguarding. I look after the Key Safeguarding's web page on a day-to-day basis. I'm going to spend a few minutes just at the start of this webinar explaining our mental health training offer that we have, and then I'm going to pass over to Andrew, who will take us through the main body of this webinar, looking at how to support pupils and their mental health. As I've said, we have a Q&A feature on Zoom, so please do use that if you have any questions throughout. There is a way to kind of like upvote questions. So if you see any questions and think, oh yeah, I really would like to know the answers to that too, just give it a little thumbs up and it just shows us which questions kind of are shared. And then if we run out of time and we're a bit short of time at the end, we can make sure that it's those real top questions that get answered. But please do try and keep them general. Don't give any identifying information about any particular pupils or your particular school. I'm afraid we can't offer that really kind of individual advice, but we can help with general questions. As I said at the beginning, hopefully all the tech is working fine. You can hear me and you can see me. If you are having any tech issues at all, honestly, with Zoom, the best thing to do is to log out and come back in again, and hopefully that will fix it. But you can also go into your audio settings and make sure that that's all set up correctly. And we are recording this and the slides will be sent round. So if you do have any blips at any point or you have to drop out early, anything like that, this will all come out to you in an email, hopefully by the end of the week. So you shouldn't miss anything. So just to kind of explain what we have on the Key Safeguarding, our mental health training library. I know we've got quite a mix of people on this call today. Some of you already have membership to the Key Safeguarding. Others of you might have a different tier or you might not be a member at all. So just to kind of summarize what we have, for a while now, we've had these downloadable briefing packs. These are PowerPoints. We have sort of like an introductory one on mental health and well-being. And then we also have training packs for all of the main sort of common mental health conditions in young people. And we have been working very hard over the last term to turn all of these into e-learning courses as well. With the exception of suicidal ideation, all of those are now live on our website, and that last one will be coming very, very soon. We've been working on these in collaboration with a host of sort of experts in the world of mental health, including Andrew. He's been invaluable in helping us build quite a few of these. And that's part of the reason why we've invited him along today. He really knows this content inside and out. In case you're kind of wondering to yourself why we have them in these two different formats, I just wanted to kind of show you an example of the difference between them and why we have both. So on this next slide, this is just a screen grab from our mental health and well-being downloadable PowerPoint pack. This is one of the very early slides about risk and protective factors for mental health and well-being. If you download the PowerPoint, what you will get is a slide deck like this. This is just, as I say, an example of one slide. You will also get some very detailed notes for the facilitator to go through, covering all of this in more detail, giving you ideas for activities or conversation starters, particular kind of like case studies at relevant points. So whoever is delivering this training, maybe your DSL, your mental health lead, or whoever you choose, has that kind of extra pack of information that they can use to help deliver this in person. But if you prefer to do it via e-learning, as you can see, it looks incredibly similar. The information, what you learn is exactly the same. It's just the format that changes. So rather than having a PowerPoint that you download, you can do this at your own pace on your own computer, you read it, it's interactive, all of those yellow buttons will open up something new. For example, if you hit, individual here, you would get something that looks like this, showing all that same information that you get in the PowerPoint pack. It's just in that kind of e-learning format. And I'll explain in a second a little bit more about why we have these two options. The other thing to add is that we have added in a lot of new video content to the e-learning, and that will be brought over into the briefing pack soon so that you have the option. I've decided against playing any video today because I think we all know we've all been on Zoom webinars where you try and play a video and it doesn't sound right for some people and it's jerky and it's laggy. That's one of the main reasons why we've made this video for the e-learning, because it is so much easier when you are on your own computer to just click and watch the video, but they will be in our PowerPoint packs as well. And these are a mix of sort of case study videos with young people explaining about their own struggles and how their school has helped them, and also some more kind of practical videos as well about things like how to have those sensitive conversations, the right body language to model, the questions to ask, that kind of thing. So as I mentioned at the beginning, there is no difference in content for these. You will learn exactly the same thing no matter whether you use the briefing pack or the e-learning. We actually did some research with DSLs while we were making this to try and decide which format to go with. And what we learnt there is it's 50-50. It's different people like different things. So if you are the kind of school where you want to have everybody in the room together, you want to be able to kind of pick up on things in the moment, or if you want to make edits to really highlight something that's very specific to the context of your school, the PowerPoints are sort of endlessly editable. You can chop bits out, you can put bits in, change the order, do whatever you want to do to make that really bespoke to your school and your school context. But if you find that getting everyone together is really tricky, we always say with these kind of topics that it's really important to train everyone, not just your school leaders. You also want maybe your teaching assistants, your lunchtime supervisors, everyone to really understand about mental health in school. It's really hard to get everyone together at the same time. Everyone has different working hours. Some people have to leave to pick up their own kids from school. So with the e-learning, you can just send the link around and people can do it at a time and a place that suits them, and they're all going to learn the same thing. And it's also not one or the other. You can absolutely mix and match these. You could choose to have a staff meeting or a twilight session where you do the PowerPoint, and if anyone misses it for whatever reason, you can send them the e-learning link and they'll get exactly the same value out of it. If you have a membership to the Key Safeguarding, then you have access to all of this right now. And then for everyone else, we will be sending around in the email after the webinar today a link to our PowerPoint version of that Introduction Mental Health and Wellbeing course. That will be available to you for a limited time, but just so you can see what it's like and what we're offering. I am going to finish there because I know we have a lot to get through, and what you really want to do is hear about Andrew and his advice on supporting pupils with mental health. So I will pass over to Andrew now. He describes himself as a coach, an author, a mentor, and a governor. He's a safeguarding governor, so very topical for this. He is a former school leader, and he now focuses on championing mental health and well-being in schools. He's got 3 books on the topic, including the Wellbeing Toolkit, which you may well have in your school. And his new book, which is the School Mental Health Toolkit, is coming out tomorrow, in fact. I know we said March in the original email, but it is tomorrow. So we are very, very lucky to have secured him to come and talk to us today. He's very busy at the moment. If you do look at that email that we send around after, there is also a discount code to get that new book if you fancy it. Andrew, as I also mentioned, has worked with us to help create our mental health training library. So, we know he has some very valuable insights to share. So I am going to hand over to him now. Remember, you can ask questions and we will pick those up at the end. Thanks, Andrew. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Catherine. I'll just share my screen with everyone. So thank you very much, Catherine, for that very warm introduction, and very welcome everyone who's been able to join us today. I can see the numbers on my screen ticking up as we go by the moments. I'm very lucky, as Catherine said, to have been involved with the staff briefing packs and the learning modules, and I can really recommend those excellent resources, useful, informative, and very accessible for your whole of your staff. So very welcome everyone today. So today we're going to be thinking about mental health, and could you spot the signs that a child is struggling? And one question for you to have a think about as we are going through the course of today is what, not only can you spot the signs, but what can you do if such an event occurs? So what we're going to be looking at learning today is this. So how we spot the early warning signs of poor pupil mental health. We'll be looking to think how we feel confident enough in our role supporting, but not diagnosing pupils. That's a crucial one. We'll keep coming back to that point throughout the next few minutes. We're going to urge you to think about thinking holistically about the whole child, from EYFS to A level. I'm not sure who we've got on the call, what your backgrounds are, but we need to think right throughout. Schools have got senior designated mental health leads, and that goes from EYFS all the way up to FE for supporting those young people. So hopefully we've got a nice range of people on the call today. And we're going to be thinking about how to raise awareness of pupil mental health and well-being amongst your staff. First of all, let's have a think about why mental health. Well, let's look at some stats. NHS England in 2023 reported that 1 in 5 young people aged 8 to 25 had a probable mental health disorder. So that's diagnosed or maybe diagnosed in the years ahead. That figure was running at 1 in 6 as we emerged from the pandemic. Pre-pandemic, and dating from 2017, which is when the mental health lead training was first proposed, that figure was 1 out of 9. So you can tell there's been a definite shift in awareness of and diagnosis of mental health conditions amongst our young people. That doesn't mean that our other 4 out of 5 don't and won't have any concerns for themselves, or that other people won't have concerns about them. And that's something that's very important to bear in mind as we go through the slides for the rest of this afternoon. Another finding from Mind 2021, a little bit dated, but 48% of young people said they felt they'd been punished for their behaviour caused by their mental health. That's very interesting one to have a think about. Children feel they've been punished for their behaviour caused by their mental health, which suggests a level of lack of understanding about the conditions that our young people are feeling. So as I said, it was a requirement in schools in England to have a senior designated mental health lead in place. The DfE grant actually expired on the 31st of December 2024, and the last cohort of training is being delivered at the moment and is finishing on the 31st of this month. And so I do hope that many of you have undertaken that training, but if you haven't, obviously there are some resources out there. The trainers out there are still offering that training, but it won't have the DfE label on it, and it won't have the DfE funding attached to it either. So mental health is about the bigger picture. And the bigger picture consists, in this case, of the whole child, by implication, the whole school. I don't want you to think about mental health on its own, but consider how every aspect of a child's experience is incorporated within what you're doing supporting mental health at school. From the moment the child walks in the gate in the morning to the moment they leave at home time, and perhaps even sometimes beyond that point in time, with so much now, of course, being delivered by apps such as Google Classroom. Key thing is to be able to support and not diagnose. We mentioned that earlier, so we'll mention that again. This is really important. It's actually embedded within keeping children safe in education. We are not trained mental health practitioners. We are trained educationalists. What we're good at doing is recognizing when a child has difficulty and recognizing when we might need more expert support to help that. But we must not be in the habit of diagnosing with conditions that we don't know factually what they are. We don't know how to identify them. Just in the same way as we should not be diagnosing certain SEND conditions. ADHD is the one that it's very typically that we hear being diagnosed by staff without full knowledge. So, what can we do to spot the signs? The first thing I think you really need to think about having is what I call a culture of noticing. What you actually notice about the changes in our young people and around their behaviours. And by behaviours, we don't always mean poor behaviour. We mean changes in their usual behaviour that you might see from our young people in school, just in the same way as you do with safeguarding. So if you've got a really strong safeguarding culture, you have the basis for creating a really good culture of noticing about mental health as well. Do you listen to your colleagues when they raise concerns? Do you listen to parents when they raise concerns? Anything could be significant because it builds up, as I said before, to that bigger picture. Even something tiny, it can all build up to that bigger picture. So you think about your recording from what you're noticing as well. It's very important that you don't miss any opportunities that might arise to deal with and support our younger people. So let's have a think about some of the signs that a pupil may be struggling with their mental health. This is not an exclusive list, but these are very typical of many that arise. Are there excessive fears and worries that a child might be expressing? I mean, this may very typically be around something like bereavement. And this is something that we found has very much been more of an issue, particularly post-COVID, because we don't need reminding about the difficulties of that time. We also don't need reminding that many of our young people, particularly in certain parts of the country, had experience of a very high death rate in their communities, perhaps within their own families. And this has led to a number of young people being very concerned about if they've lost one family member, that other family members may become unwell as too. And this has impacted upon attendance. Emotional-based school avoidance reports very much that many concerns have been about being away from families and being aware of attachment issues as well. But excessive fears and worries can also come out around learning, and they can also come around tests as well. Now, anxiety around tests, and in fact, anxiety is quite a normal emotion. But anxiety, in another sense, is a diagnosable condition, a condition which can be crippling. And it's one that we need to be very accurate about. So a child that's worried about doing their spelling test at the age of 8 or 9, for example, that's quite a normal response to be worried whether they can remember the spelling of the words that they've set for that week. For older children, particularly those who GCSE and A-level, natural amount of anxiety about those examinations, because they're potentially life-changing, life-making examinations. There's bound to be a level of anxiety around that. But it's a natural result of concern is one thing. But when that anxiety becomes more crippling and their ability to do the examination is affected, have a think about how you might deal with that. Being hyperactive is also a sign of struggling with mental health. Not a child who is always seemingly hyperactive, but one that's suddenly becoming more so. And this can become evident in the way they move and also in the way they speak. They may suddenly start speaking a lot quicker. They may be, example, a child who is not very compliant, suddenly is getting out of their seat or moving from the classroom a lot more. And this could be a sign of a number of things. It could be a sign of a changing diet, of course, and that might impact upon a child's behaviour and speech. It could also be a sign of a level of anxiety. And that anxiety could, of course, be a reflection of any kind of thing going on at home, any kind of thing that's going on in school. So be aware of changes in activity in that way. Changes in sleep habits, because you don't know how long a child is asleep for unless something gets reported to you. But if you're noticing a child falling asleep in class, putting their head down on the desk, it's not a sign of defiance. It might be a sign of deep sleep deprivation. And of course, there are a number of factors there. Be aware of and investigate where it's coming from. Of course, the child could be up late gaming or on their phone. We all know there's a number of different challenges that children do on their phones. We know they shouldn't be using WhatsApp. We can tell them, but we know that they do. But there could be other things impacting upon sleep habits. There could be worries about school. There could be fears about bullying that are going on. There could be fears around the learning that's going on as well, impacting their sleep. We all, I think, have suffered from impacted sleep before, and we know that very often for us as grown-ups, it can concern worries that are going on. So children are very likely to have that as well, because we can see if children are having those sleep interruptions, because we can identify those children who are yawning, sometimes even falling asleep in class. Have a look out for emotional changes amongst our young people, and that can come in a number of ways. It can come through a change in their usual facial expression. That child that's usually quite smiley, but who suddenly isn't for a protracted period of time, that's indicating something may be going on. Again, equally, that child that always looks a bit grumpy and doesn't smile very often, that might suddenly change. It might become a mood, might look like a mood swing in one way or another. Be very aware of those changes and noting that. Also have a look at the children's body language as well. It's very expressive, particularly those children who find it difficult to express their emotions, who haven't got the emotional literacy. A lot might come through their body language. Are they looking a bit more lethargic, for example? And have a think about the tone of voice that the children use. Again, is that tone of voice becoming lethargic? Or is it perhaps becoming a little more short-tempered than they usually are? If you know your children and know your children well, you'll be able to identify this. Another sign, decline in school attendance. Well, of course, this can obviously be tracked, because virtually all of us, I should imagine, are recording our attendance electronically, and we can produce our stats almost instantaneously. But it's worth looking at patterns there. Is a child who's normally got a really good attendance suddenly and inexplicably having a change in attendance patterns, more than seasonal colds and flu, but regular missing times? Are they missing particular periods of time? And is there a reason behind that? Is it Fridays? Is it certain days of the week? Sometimes is it to avoid homework? Is it to avoid tests? And other things. There's patterns you can think about there. But you can also perhaps identify patterns around performance in examination results is one way, but of course in analysing your marked work. And also in behaviour. Behaviour, again, will also be tracked most likely in your schools if a child is suddenly getting more demerits and more detentions, if that's a particular method that you use. That is something that you should be monitoring in terms of their mental health, as well as in terms of obviously managing your behaviour in your school. It's a child showing a lack of interest or loss of interest in their friends and their favourite activities. That is a huge indicator in many ways. Particularly, many children have things that they prefer doing. That child is always playing football out on the field and suddenly doesn't want to. That child that's suddenly not working and with the same friendship group. What's the change there? Is something happening there? Is some bullying going on? Is a friend, some other influences going on in that young person's life? Lots of appetite and weight change is another sign to look out for as well. And again, avoid stereotypical thoughts here. It used to be regarded very much as something that was a gender-based thing, but boys actually account for some 20% or more now of young people suffering with eating disorders. So please be very aware of that. And sometimes you may not always notice it at lunchtimes, but you may notice it, for example, when children are changing for PE, when there's a noticeable shift in body weight as they are changing into their PE kits. Okay, let's move on to having a think about understanding your role in supporting but not diagnosing pupils. Let's reinforce that again. We all have mental health, just the way we all have physical health. Some of us will have mental ill health. Some of our young people will have mental ill health. It might be short term. It might be something that self-help strategies can help overcome. Maybe that teaching resilience can help overcome. And that will form part of your universal offer for mental health that everyone is able to access. But of course, you may have some more long-term issues, and this may be something that may be addressed through a level of counselling or other therapies. And of course, you then also may have more permanent conditions, one that may require, very possibly, a level of medication from an expert to diagnose. So not our jobs as teachers, remember, to diagnose, but one to identify when there are particular issues and directing people to help. One of the most helpful things that we can do in schools is to talk to our young people about mental health and about their concerns that they may have. One thing we can do is make sure we find an appropriate time to talk in a relaxed and quiet space. There are some very obvious places which are not suitable if a child wants to have a word with a trusted adult. But there are very many that schools do have a special place, a more comfortable place, a quieter, smaller place away from the hustle and bustle of what goes on in school every day. But don't just think about having an actual space. Think about having a psychological safe space as well, where a child knows they can feel safe in what they are saying. They know they're going to be trusted. But in the same way, with safeguarding, have a think about these other points as well. Think about open questions, not closed questions or leading questions, open questions that allow the young person to speak freely. Have a think about active listening. Repeating back what has just been said to you is a way of affirming what the young person is saying and also showing that you wish to get a really good level of understanding from that. Following up with a question, again, is also a good way of showing that you're engaging with that young person. Even if that question is, and what do you think? It's acknowledgement of what's being said. This leads us on to being able to offer empathy rather than solutions. So not telling people what to do, but being empathetic and understanding of the situation the young person may be feeling. You can't promise not to tell anyone what's being said, exactly in the same way as with the safeguarding disclosure, because, again, the young person will know that you're not the expert, but you are trusted to take matters forward. Please take what they're saying seriously. Acknowledging what they are feeling actually gives validation to their voice, validation to their feelings, and don't minimize them, don't dismiss them. And particularly don't give terms like manning up, for example, or not being soft. Those are inappropriate terms and they don't give validation to what the young person may be feeling. But also think about the level and the intellectual capacity of our young people. Think about allowing young children to model, play with toys, or even use some art and drawing to help them express what they're feeling. And remember that some young people with SEND may struggle to express their feelings and may need some extra level of support, either human or resource-wise, to express what they are concerned with. Let's move on to thinking holistically now about mental health and raising awareness. I'd just like you to think for a minute about the whole school, from a whole school perspective, and have a think about the purpose of education. I was minded recently of a teacher TAP survey conducted a few years ago. Adrian Bethune, who you may know from his book Wellbeing in the Primary Classroom, wrote an interesting article about this and reshared this recently. Teacher TAP survey of 8,000 teachers asked them what the positive outcomes young people should have coming out of school. That's the top three. 59% of these said self-confidence, 58% said respect for others, 52% said life skills, 38% said the love of learning. The top four answers, all things that contribute to happiness and well-being and more stable mental health. Interestingly, a rich knowledge of subjects, until recently the focus of the government and Ofsted, only 23% of teachers felt that was a desirable outcome at the end. So just bear that in mind. Have a think about what your purpose of education is. What's your purpose? Why are you in education? Does it include those wider points? Does it include that holistic approach? And have a think about your why as a teacher, as an individual, and as a school. Why mental health? Are you doing this because you're told to do it? Is it an expectation? Or are you doing it because you know it's going to be for the wider benefit of the school and the individual children within it? So I'd like us to think now about mental health. And we're going to use THINK as an acronym. And the T of THINK is for time. Give your young people time. How you check in with them in the mornings, what you notice about them will take time. And grow, as I said earlier, a culture of noticing. Any identification and intervention that you need to put in place needs to be timely. I've used timely deliberately there, not immediately. There will be some cases where it does need to be immediate, but some needs to be timely to allow for an observation and perhaps to allow for some appropriate intervention with parents to be put in place as well. If you've got a team of staff working on mental health, allow them the time to meet, allow them time to draw up an agenda, and also allow them to express contrary opinions as well, rather than meet and doing decisions on the hoof. Take your time and be very patient in constructing your curriculum around mental health. This is our universal offer. We'll talk a little bit more about this in a little while. And crucially, never allow time to go to waste. As teachers, we are time poor, as we know. So let's make the very best of our time. Let's think a little bit more about the H, the holistic side of mental health. Holistic views look at the underlying causes of issues. Don't allow mental health to sit in a box in its own. The culture around mental health is also the culture around safeguarding, attendance, behaviour, learning and assessment. Each of those will feed into each other. They sit alongside and astride each other. As part of this, are your staff aware of the impact mental health can have on attainment, attendance and behaviour? Are your staff aware of risk factors? Now, Catherine mentioned those earlier. Let me just reinforce some of the key risk factors and the adverse childhood experiences our children might have. Abuse and neglect at the hands of families, other family members, and sometimes peers. Coercive behaviours. That can include domestic violence, but can also include the influence of gangs outside of the home. Prejudicial behaviour is an ACE as well. It can be racial, sexist, misogynistic. It can be LGBTQ+. It might be disability prejudice, neurodiversity and ableism. And of course, increasingly, it can also be around refugee status and asylum status as well. Many of our young people may find that they are now the young carers. And are you aware of that? There may be young people who suffer from inhuman treatment related perhaps to FGM, modern slavery, or perhaps they've even been trafficked. Substance abuse is another adverse childhood experience. Financial deprivation, particularly under the current economic climate. And trauma around war, oppressive regimes, migration and asylum. Obviously, we have a very large number of Ukrainian and also Russian refugees in the country at the moment. Many children will have been impacted by what's happening in Gaza and further afield in the Middle East. But of course, many of our young people have arrived in this country as their families have escaped oppressive regimes and have sought asylum. And of course, there are a number of social media channels which give misinformation about that. So please be aware of misinformation that our young people may be hearing and perhaps sharing. And a few stats about adverse childhood experiences from Young Minds. In England, just over a half of our young people have never experienced an adverse childhood experience. But 23% have experienced one, 16%, that's 1/6, between 2 and 3, and 9% have experienced 4 or more. Have a think about young people in your class and young people in your school. Are you aware of the ACEs that they have suffered? And are your staff aware of that? Does everyone understand the broader offer you have for your young people? And also have a think about your intent statement if you've written one. Take that to your pupils. Do they recognise what it says? Do they recognise what you are trying to do to support them? The I think, is being inclusive. Really think about embracing your student voice. It can be drawn, written and typed as well as spoken. You might have your regular surveys. You might have your regular school councils in your PSHE lessons. But if you also have that line that all behaviour is communication and not bad behaviour, all behaviours, the way that a child conducts themselves, that means that their voice can be available at any time, spoken, written, or communicated in a different way. Have a think about embracing your staff voice and also your parental voice as well. Think about the triangulation of staff, pupils, and parents. A triangle, as good primary teachers know, is the strongest shape that there is. It's supportive in a structure. Effective triangulation between the 3 parts that make up our community will enable the strongest impact on the mental health of our young people. Remember that our staff may be neurodiverse as well as some of our pupils. Have a think about including the quiet and the introverted just as much as you do the loud and the extroverted people. Those you notice a bit more are obviously going to express their voice, but those who are quiet and introverted, don't allow them to be slipping under the radar. And have a think about your universal offer. While addressing specific needs, there should also be a strategic awareness of the universal offer that all your pupils receive. And that is within your lessons, within your PSHE, broadly across the curriculum as well. There's a place for it elsewhere in the curriculum too, but also your assemblies, also your rules, the conduct in the corridors, conduct at lunchtimes and playtimes as well. The N of think is being non-judgmental. Now, you may have some negativity around having a mental health lead. You often see this on social media. Certainly when I've shared mental health courses on there, you get some very cynical comments. Why are the teachers having to do this as well? Negativity may mean opposition, but can also mean fear. Fear about saying the wrong thing, but also fear about triggering perhaps the teacher's own mental health conditions as well. Think about developing strategies to challenge stigma. And stigma isn't just prejudice, but it can also include like using terms inaccurately or without secure knowledge. Being aware, as I said, of adverse childhood experiences, which I mentioned a little earlier. You may also have children and adults who have not developed a level of emotional literacy, and they may express themselves through actions and responses in different ways. All behaviour, after all, is communication. And also, please don't be judgmental of parents. Please try and avoid terms like helicopter or overprotective parents. A parental concern may also be an indicator of parental mental health, which of course is another risk factor and something to be aware of. And our final part of think is K for being knowledgeable. One thing I remember from my teacher training many years ago was know your class, know your context. One size doesn't fit all. You may be coming from a village school with less than 100 people, maybe an inner city school of 2,000, or an FE college numbering the pupils in tens of thousands. Know your strategy and know what works for your young people. Know your pupils, know what makes them tick, know what their aces are. And also with your staff, think about their needs and experiences and relationships with each other. Also know who's really going to be very good at supporting members of staff, as well as your young people as well. And think about who might perhaps need some more training and support. Think also about growing your vocabulary around mental health, not suggesting have a list of banned words and encouraged words, but think about putting that regularly and normalizing vocabulary and normalizing conversations. Think about knowing the challenges and barriers to socialization, communication, and learning that your young people have. Their educational experience the children have is about the whole child. And if you really want to analyze relationships, have a think about using a social good relationships at heart to school with a positive culture around mental health. I'm just going to finish with a demonstration of a sociogram on the next slide. The sociogram is just a really simple way of understanding the workings of a group. And this is just a very small group. As you can see, you've got everyone's name in a circle and arrows going to who people interact with very typically. And you can see between Jill and Jake, you have two-way interaction. That would indicate something that's probably quite a strong relationship. But Ali only interacts with Jill and David, and that's one way. And he's getting nothing back. This might be an indication of he's in charge or he's a bit of a bully. But it may be an indication that he's being left a bit isolated. He's trying to interact, but not getting any feedback. You can develop this a bit further and you can read much more about how sociograms work with a bit of a search online. But I'll leave you that point as the final point, and you can develop that and make it much more sophisticated. So a few key takeaways before we finish off. Be vigilant to changes in the child's mood or behaviour. They could be warning signs, something more significant. Remember, your role is to support children who may be struggling and don't have to diagnose them. Remember that the THINK acronym can help you raise awareness of your pupil's mental health and really think holistically about the whole child. And I'll hand over to Catherine for any questions that we've got coming through.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Andrew. That was absolutely fascinating to listen to, and I hope it's been really helpful for anyone on the call. I am aware that it is 1 minute to time. If anyone does have any burning questions, do pop them in the Q&A section on Zoom or in the chat. I'll give people a moment in case they do have any questions to type. I was aware I spotted someone asking a question about the timings for our training library. So just while people are typing, I'll just mention that. For the e-learnings, they are sort of between 30 and 45 minutes, depending on the the topic. Some take a bit longer than others. For the PowerPoint packs, we tend to say give it an hour, just because these things often take a bit longer when you're doing it in person and delivering rather than doing it online. We have got a couple of questions coming through. Oh, I'm mostly just saying thank you, and yeah, thank you, Andrew, for saying how useful that's been. I've got one here. I know we are at time, but I think we've got one question here that we could probably just do quickly to finish off on. Do you have any practical strategies to support students who might be expressing suicidal ideation or self-harming? Any practical tips in the moment?
Right. There are a number of organisations you can link them to, and certainly keep parents involved in that loop as well. The Molly Rose Foundation is a group set up in response to the foundation of Molly Rose, the suicide of Molly Rose Russell, and that's particularly linked to online activities. That's one particular thing to think about. So online behaviours that young children may be experiencing. There are a couple of other organisations, but I can't think off the top of my head. Childline is probably an obvious place to make a reference to. Samaritans also, but certainly it's not something to keep to themselves. It's something that you must be sharing with parents. There, but I can look up some different organisations there.
Questions in the Q&A are actually just saying, oh, I'm not on mute. Sorry, I had a message saying I was on mute, but I think people can hear me. Yeah, lots of people saying thank you, Andrew, and yeah, thank you from me as well. That's been really, really helpful.
Oh yes, so someone said yes, papyrus. That's the. I was trying to think of that. Thank you to who's it put that there? Papyrus and Ripple Suicide Prevention, which Sarah's put up as well, and Jill put up Papyrus. So thank you very much for that. So I had a bit of brain fog there.
That's all good. It's gone 5 o'clock. That's perfectly understandable. Brilliant. We will leave it there. If there are any questions that we've missed, we will have a log of these, so I'm sure we'll be able to send extra support out if needs be. So yeah, all it's left is to say thank you again, Andrew, for your time. Thank you everyone who's joined us, and have a good evening. Thank you and good night.
Thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy your evening.